Good afternoon and welcome to 1 p.m. Weekly News, where we bring you the latest news and stories on climate change, sustainability, and a rapidly changing world. I'm your host, Shelby Kammerer. Let's get into it. For our first story, we have great news from the state of Montana. 16 youth plaintiffs filed a lawsuit against the state in 2020 based on language in the Montana Constitution that guarantees, quote, the right to a clean and healthful environment. They alleged that the state violated their rights by encouraging the use of fossil fuels that degrade the environment and contribute to poor health outcomes. Last week, a state court ruled in favor of the plaintiffs, striking down a policy that barred consideration of greenhouse gas emissions in fossil fuel permitting. An attorney representing the suit called the result, quote, a game changer that marks a turning point in this generation's efforts to save the planet. Next, we have updates on the wildfires that ravaged Maui. Over 100 people have died, and search and recovery efforts are still underway. Thousands more have been displaced and are staying in shelters, hotel rooms, and other temporary housing situations. Early estimates show $3.2 billion in insured property losses. That said, many residents are eager to return to a sense of normalcy. Public schools have begun the process to reopen, and a main access road has resumed traffic. Last week, the U.S. Department of Energy announced almost $500 million to create solar energy infrastructure in Puerto Rico. The funding stems from the $1 billion Puerto Rico Energy Resilience Fund established in December 2022. Hurricane Maria rocked the island of Puerto Rico and took out power for months in 2017, and Hurricane Fiona knocked out power again in 2022. The energy grid is in dire need of revitalization, and this move from the Department of Energy shows that renewables will be a major part of that revitalization. Next, the U.S. passed the Inflation Reduction Act 1 year ago. The law aimed to address issues like drug prices, corporate taxes, and climate change. Since then, over 100 new clean energy manufacturing facilities have been announced. Worldwide, investors are contributing funds to U.S.-based green energy systems like solar and wind. And government agencies have set new goals and enacted regulations to reach climate goals. Still, as of April 2023, polling showed that 40% of registered voters didn't know about the Inflation Reduction Act. There's certainly more work to do to spread the word about the impact of the legislation and what it can mean for everyday Americans. In related news, the U.S.-based Heritage Foundation has already developed a proposal to push back on climate progress should a Republican be elected president in the next term. The proposal, called Project 2025, was written with collaboration from a variety of right-leaning groups and organizations. The project's presidential transition guide includes a chapter specifically for the Department of Energy that recommends the elimination of 3 different agency offices that contribute to green energy transitions, and it proposes cutting funding to the Grid Deployment Office. The 2024 election in the U.S. will be critical to determining if the country can continue to move toward a greener future or put climate deniers in state and federal offices. Meanwhile, the United Nations has concluded the removal of over 1 million barrels of crude oil from an abandoned supertanker off the coast of Yemen. The total cost of the cleanup effort is more than $140 million, and it took 2 years to fundraise for the project. $20 million is still needed to remove the final 2% of oil remaining and to conclude cleanup. The removal of the oil will prevent potentially catastrophic leaks or even explosions that would have led to the closure of all ports in Yemen and surrounding regions. That would have cut off vital trade, including food and medical supplies. Finally, 2023 marks the 50th anniversary of the U.S. Endangered Species Act. The law legally protects threatened or endangered wildlife and has contributed to conservation of countless species. The U.S. Department of Fish and Wildlife Service is asking Americans to celebrate this milestone by taking further steps to protect wildlife. Suggestions range from planting a pollinator garden to volunteering your time. The full list will be linked in our show notes so you can take action too. Those are the latest top-line environmental stories. Please join us again next week for a new episode of 1 p.m. Weekly News.